which will really first, if I identify a good market segment properly, have a good job, and then write a good need statement for that, you are definitely going to be far ahead in the game than you would. After that, it would be a hit or miss otherwise. Hmm? Any other questions? Yes.
So the problem that comes during scalability from niche to big market,
Sorry, scalability in the
big market.
big market.
If you enter your niche,
Hmm. Yes, yes. So, exactly. So, the question here is supposing you make your market segment, your, for example, persona, the person who's going to represent your first early user group. Okay? Supposing you do that and it turns out to be highly restricted, it only is going to cater to 20 somethings who are only fitness freaks and who wake up only at 5 a.m. and sleep by 9 a.m., 9 p.m. Okay? How many people, 20 somethings, will probably do that, right? If it becomes too small, too specific, you will know that it is not going to be scalable as it is, right? And that's her question. So this will also help you understand uh, the scalability right away. You will step back and say, look, maybe my need statement should be written with a broader perspective in mind, such that I get something out of actually going ahead and building the job. Does it answer your question? Is that the question you had? There is an iteration. So the persona need not be one and you're done. Like in every aspect of your design, there has to be an iterative process where you go back and look at, okay, if this is the product I'm going to give and this is the my market segment and I cannot see this scaling up, okay, then I step back and try to see what else I can do to expand that need statement to try to make sure that I'm essentially solving a similar problem and maybe sometimes completely different problem. Even throw out that problem if you cannot go past that barrier. Okay, so it is an important aspect, and the iteration is an important aspect. Any other questions? Okay, so shall we go ahead and try the writing the need statement with something? Okay. Um, so supposing I want to, uh, um, so I need. Um, Supposing I want to write a new need statement in a lawnmower segment, lawnmower industry segment. Okay, so I want to write. So I want you to try your hand at writing a need statement based. I don't know. We don't do much lawnmowers, so this is one of the questions that I discussed with my colleague Arun, who's from Texas A&M. So maybe I should not do lawnmowers. Not something that we see every day. Okay. Let's see how do we do it. Okay. A need statement in the medium transport. So tempo, like you have these tempo travelers which will transport a certain set of goods for like this small mom and pop stores. Like we want to come up with a need statement. What do we need if you're a customer there? How would you express a need for a new such vehicle? Okay, so why don't you just take a minute, try to write it up, and then I'll hear from you, and then I will start uh, going through this process of the iteration to try to show you what this does. Okay, if you think of any other segment like this, you also please go ahead and do that, and you can also tell me the segment. And now is we are trying to write down what is called a need statement. Okay, so what will happen is, so I'm just supposing you happen to be in the in Ashok Leyland and you happen to be producing these uh, uh, these trucks, these small trucks which will transport small amount of goods from one large go down to some nearby shopping center store. Okay, uh, what you want to try to do is you want to come up with a need statement in that segment. So what do I need? Okay. So, for example, just to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so, well, so I'm not going to say anything. What will a customer say they need in this segment? Okay. We'll try to write it down. Now, what I want to, at the end of this exercise, I want to show you that there will be a difference between I want this and I need this. How are we going to start separating this out? Because lots of times your customer will come and say, I want everything in the world for 1 rupee. If at all they don't even shell out that 1 rupee. They'll say, I'll give you 1 rupee, they won't even give you that. Right? So I want versus I need. How do we start making a distinction between that? So this happens to be the important first step in order to try to go through this design process. So come up with what a customer would typically come to you and say, I need this in this small transportation segment. And then we will try to see what are the different kinds of need statements, and we will try to see whether there is a want in it or it really is a need which can be translated into your design process. Is that clear now? Okay, just take a minute and just try to write something, and just we'll go through a couple of examples and we will just person who's going to buy dust and coming to Ashok Leyland to tell this is what I need. You are putting yourself in the shoes of the client. Everybody okay? They're going to start with some session. Yeah, go ahead.
I need X amount of product in my shop at Y interval every day.
Okay. So you are talking. Great. That's a good start. So you are actually in the perspective of what? Whose perspective are you saying?
In the perspective of the user,
Aha. Okay. Okay. So what he's saying is he's the owner of a shop. He's the owner of a particular shop, let's say Ambika Palam Depot in a shopping center in IIT. And he's got this vehicle as a part of his thing. He wants to be able to go to the godown and bring a certain amount of X stuff. And he wants to be able to do it in a...
thinking of more basic.
Huh.
Somebody can deal with whatever maybe the medium.
Uh-huh.
But I need some, let's say I sell milk in the morning. I need milk every morning in my shop. That's it.
Fine.
How it comes is different.
Okay, so he's not focusing particularly on the mode of the transport. He just wants the stuff to be delivered. Okay, good. Anybody else? Yes. The average. Fuel efficiency. Okay. Okay.
As well as it should have ample space to carry more goods.
Okay. So fuel efficiency and space. Okay.
I need a vehicle with different compartments. Compartments of different sizes.
Okay.
I want more. I want to optimize. I want to use the less space of that
Okay.
vehicle.
Okay. So in other words, you want a vehicle that is better organized rather than just one flatbed. You want something that is organized, that has some organizational capability in it. Okay. Okay. We'll come back to all these things and we'll try to discuss from different points of view. Yeah, please go ahead.
Should be easy to ride on small roads.
Small. It should be easy to ride on narrow and small roads. Okay. Okay. What else? I'm sorry.
Parts and
Parts is for the vehicle itself. Okay. Okay. Good.
While taking the loads or something, like there should be some support to take it into the compartment of the vehicle. Suppose like it
Uh-huh.
Easier loading.
I see. Okay. Easier loading and unloading. Easier unloading and unloading is a need for this customer. So if I go and as Ashok Leyland, if I go to him and say, I have these range of trucks, he's going to say, nope. Easy unloading, unloading. No, then go away. Okay. He's not going to buy my product. Yes.
I need a truck which has a half chiller and
Refrigerated products. So his shop, he also stocks refrigerated products. Okay. So he needs a product which will have a refrigerator or not. Okay. So if you look at now, so these are kind of, anybody else wants to pipe up anything? Okay. Yeah.
case of accident, the driver safety.
Okay, safety for the drivers. Okay, so good. I mean, as engineers, we always have to look for definitely the safety. As I say, any fool can strap, following his idea, a bunch of helium balloons to your chair and go up into the air. Okay, but only an engineer can bring that person down safely, right? Or any fool can invent a wheel, but only the engineer can invent the brake, right? So So safety happens to be a very important aspect. I'm sure all of you are keeping that in mind. So as an aside. So now, so we went through certain set of need statements. Okay. Now we can start classifying those need statements into various aspects. Okay. So some of them were like, about parts accessibility and repair, driver safety and so on. Fuel efficiency. And which are definitely a lot of customers do want, okay? But if you look at really in terms of the transport aspects of it, transporting things, organization, refrigeration, loading, unloading, these would be the needs, okay? So you can actually look at the need statement of a customer, and they usually don't come, of course, with only one statement. They'll come with a lot of such statements. Okay? Using this, you start abstracting out the need. What do we mean by that? So you will say, okay, some of them have to do with vehicle performance, safety, repairability, and so on, narrow roads. Others have to do with the usability of the device. So you will start looking at it, and then we will now go forward and try to see how we can abstract out the need. So the need right now is very specific. As soon as he said compartments, as soon as he said refrigeration, in your minds you will immediately think of already stuff that you've seen regarding compartments. In his mind, or he'll think of refrigerators, just taking a refrigerator and putting it. Okay? What else could be done? Space maximization, somebody said, like this. What will happen is, if you look at it from that specific viewpoint, you will become very specific in your approach. You cannot innovate too much. Your innovations will just be small tweaks. You will just take something from somewhere else and put it. What we are going to do, and this is the most important takeaway I'd like to share, is how do we abstract the need? How do we step away from what these customers have said, clients have said, and put it in an abstract fashion? All right? So we'll just go forward with that. So please keep your need statements in mind. Then we will abstract them out later. So before and this abstraction, there is the design philosophy that I'm going to talk about, the innovative design philosophy I'm going to talk about today, has really three aspects which I'm going to talk about. One is what's called the abstraction of need, which happens to be very important. I'll spend quite an amount of time on that. Then we will talk about what's called a critical parameter identification. We have to, because what will happen is, we came up with a bunch of needs already for just this thing, 2 minutes. Okay? Imagine somebody who's been expressing the pain of transporting goods for a long time. They will have a long list. Okay? Now we'll have to come up with a critical parameter. What do we mean by that? We'll look at it. Okay? And the third one is? Sorry, it's a single parameter or? No, there will be a bunch of parameters. And how do we do that? We'll come up through a certain process of questioning. Okay? So critical parameters, not necessarily one. As we all know, and you can never with one means you can always optimize it completely. Unfortunately, you'll always have two constraints which are butting heads, which are going to just make life miserable, right? And also fun. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the first and an important aspect called abstraction of need. So we all gave need statements, and which are very specific. Okay? We will talk about. So what we're going to do is, we're going to talk about how to eliminate solution-specific details. Organization by itself will keep one particular solution already. We'll try to talk about how to make it more abstract, such that we'll avoid getting into specifics right in the beginning. Second thing is, we want to, that also goes into defining the problem in solution neutral terms. We don't want to prejudice the person into a particular solution. And the customers will always do that to you. The moment they say certain things, looks like they're already looking for something. Next thing is, luckily nobody said any quantitative stuff, but usually they will come to quantitative. They'll say that I have 20 liters of refrigerated stuff I have to carry, and 150 liters of non-refrigerator stuff I have to carry. Like that, they'll come and give you very quantitative information. Okay? It is fine. You have to satisfy the quantitative constraints at the end of the day. But if you start with that, you are going to get into trouble. That is going to be the bottom line of this talk. Okay? So we're going to get rid of the quantitative stuff right in the beginning. And we'll also question and eliminate fictitious constraints. Okay? So literally speaking, some of the constraints, some of the need statements, like some of you said about this, may not really be necessary to satisfy your need. Right? Somebody said, I want to carry as much stuff as possible. Is it necessary or not? We have to be able to find out whether it's really a real need or a fictitious need. Okay? So just have an example right here of something that's slightly unrelated, maybe a bit small, so I'll read it out. So supposing you were given the task to redesign the brakes of a car. Okay? Usually, usually they'll come and tell you. Supposing I'm doing new brakes, like I'm doing the anti-lock brake system. I'm for Indian trucks. So somebody will come from Ashok Leyland and say, "Can you design this for me?" They will come and tell me directly, "I want pneumatic brakes. Right now, the pneumatic brakes will only respond after 0.7 seconds. But I want pneumatic brakes which will respond after 0.1 seconds and will bring the truck, a 20,000 kilogram truck, which is traveling at 80 kilometers per hour, to a stop within 150 meters." This is what the client will come and tell you. Okay? Now, if it is going to be solved only in purely engineering terms, sometimes there will be a constraint where I may have to solve it only in that. I might be a consultant where I'm only looking at doing some aspects of it. That is fine. Okay, as an academic, I might be okay with that. But if I'm going to be a company that's going to supply new anti-lock brake to Ashok Leyland, I want to make sure I step back and find out which of those is really what they need. Why did they say pneumatic? If you go and ask them, it will turn out that that's what that person has been reading all the time. They just don't know that there is something else. It is not really a constraint. You give them something else, they'll be perfectly happy. Okay? Then they'll tell you so many kilometers, so many these things. That also, what we're going to try to do is we're going to see how to abstract out the need as a first step. What do we mean by that? So here, for example, if you take the need statements, usually I want a better brake which will stop the car quickly, is what a customer will come and tell you. I want a better brake which will stop the car quickly. Okay? So that will be more of a colloquial. That's what a usual client will come and tell you. They won't have thought through very technical specs mostly. So then what we do is we start making that statement. So that's the need statement. Okay? We'll start abstracting out the need in certain way, and we'll see how it leads us to a very different. So as soon as you think, okay, I need brakes, what will you do? If you're going to be in the import-export business, you will just call up China and say, what is the best brakes you have, cheapest price, and you will just sell it to him with a tidy 20% profit, and that's what you'd want to do. Okay? But if you want to go back and start innovating and coming up with new stuff, what you have to do is, you have to abstract out new need statement. So for example, you convert the statement to, instead of using stop the car, you say reduce the speed of the car from a certain high speed to rest in a certain distance or time. Okay? So it has become a little bit more technical first. Okay? But now we can start making it more abstract. We'll say we want to, I don't care whether I have come to a stop. I want to decelerate in a controlled fashion. It's a much more abstract fashion than saying I need to stop the car. Stop the car means it's only very specific. But sometimes by saying decelerate the car, you want to be able to control more about the car than you would have started off with. You understand? So that is what we mean by abstraction. Is that clear? We'll go through this and we will come up with some more examples and we'll do it for other need statements to make sure we are all on the same page. And then you can make it even more abstract. Of course, here we're going technical abstractions, but you need to do it even technically. Here, to dissipate the kinetic energy of a car at a required rate. Okay, to remove the kinetic energy of the car at a required rate. And then, so in other words, remove it means I don't want to necessarily throw it out. I can transform it into some other fashion. So to transform the translation kinetic energy at the highest acceptable rate. So if you see that this is far more abstract and generic, this doesn't look like a braking at this point in time, really speaking. But this tells you more about the entire braking process than only thinking about stopping the car. So literally, if you want to stop the car, I can put a brick wall in front of it, right? That's definitely not going to be good, okay? So you want to basically start thinking about what it is about that stopping. You want to control it in a careful fashion is what you're going to do, right? So this, and this goes from the traditional brakes to the regenerative braking system, which people are trying to put into various vehicles, okay? So let me see, what is the next slide? I forget now, but yeah. So let's look at the let's look at one of the need statements that somebody made and try to do the same abstraction. It need not be a technical abstraction, but it will be a an abstraction nevertheless. 1 second. In fact, I could do that right now. So how do we do this abstraction process? Let's do that systematically. We'll talk about that and then we'll start doing it. Okay. For abstracting a need, you have to ask the question why. Okay. So why do you want to do this? Okay. And you should ask the customer to give you the answer in a very specific format. It should have a verb, noun. One verb, one noun should be the answer for the question why. Okay? You'll be surprised, this will abstract it. And conversely, I'll also give you the converse right away. How do you make it more specific? Can anybody tell me? How do you make the answer more specific? Huh? No, what question should you ask to make it more specific? Huh? Not another why. Why will always make it abstract? How? How exactly? How will you do it? If you say, answer will become a lot more specific than what you had started off with. Okay? Let's try it out. It's damn interesting. It really leads to. So what we mean is, so if you ask to stop a car, why do you want to stop the car? What will be your answer? Sorry? So to prevent, so you have to answer the question only with a verb noun. One verb, one noun. That's all. No, all other words are superfluous. Okay? What will you answer? Sorry? No, reach destination is not going to be the purpose of the brakes, right? You're already hurtling towards the destination. You'll reach it faster if you don't brake. Okay? Huh? To change the motion. Change motion. Change direction. Okay? Is that a brake? Is that a real answer for stop car? I mean, braking? Avoid accident. To stop at a traffic light. Okay? So, sure, all of them do serve the purpose. And in fact, it's useful exercise. I'm glad all of you gave these different answers. It turns out, by asking why, you actually start a branching process about which aspect is becoming important to you. The moment you answer a certain thing, it shows that that answer happens to be more important to the customer also. Okay? So why do you want to brake the car? Why do you want to apply brakes, or why do you want to have brakes? To reduce speed or avoid accidents, stop at a traffic signal, and so on. These are stop at a traffic signal, avoid accident, reduce speed. So these are all verb noun formats. Okay. So by looking at these different answers, you can actually start identifying what happens to be the more important aspect of the system you're designing. It will naturally come out. You will never answer a why question with something that is irrelevant. It'll turn out. At least the customer will rarely do it. Okay? So let's do that for okay. So we can, and you can continue to ask these why questions. Okay. So why do you want to reduce the speed of the car from 60 to 0? Doesn't really lead to that. Yeah, this doesn't really come into that, but there may be some other examples. Let us just do. Let's go to the tempo example, the one which is carrying the stuff. Okay. So you had a need statement. Okay. So supposing he said, I want to have the lowest mileage. I mean, the fuel cost per transport. That was the need statement of that customer. So I ask, why do you want to do that? Okay, save money. Now, if I want to look at the save money, it might be because I might put a bigger engine and make the tempo larger in size and effectively show you that you're actually saving money by doing that. You understand that you can come up with so if I chose like reduce the mileage, I would only think about the engine and coming up with a better engine, maybe EV or something else I would think of. I would only focus on a specific aspect of the transportation device. But if I ask why you save money, saving money, what are all the things that lead into saving money? Maybe a fewer trips. So maybe you're looking for a bigger vehicle or something completely, maybe they have to do many trips because of the absence of a refrigeration device, or maybe the packing is not proper. So saving money, if you go back, you'll start looking at it a little bit more broadly. Okay. Whereas if you ask, how do I implement better mileage? Then you'll start looking, maybe I should do 2-stroke engine versus 4-stroke engine versus EV versus something like that. You'll start looking at the embodiments of what is going to happen will start coming out. Okay. So another need statement. Somebody said something else. Sorry. Okay. I need to have better loading and unloading. Okay. So that is a need statement that we have. Why do you need better loading and unloading? Okay. So it is because the workers are experiencing back pain and he frequently has to send them off to for medical treatment. That is the customer's requirement. If the same need statement was given, somebody else, what would they have given? I mean, I thought of something else when I was asking him the question. What else? No loading and unloading. Why somebody will need an efficient eases of access by itself. It's not going to give you a verb noun form. Save time. That is another possibility. So the same statement which you're given, if I had just focused on his need statement as it is, I may have answered the question of save time, whereas actually he is experiencing customers who are actually getting into trouble because of their health issues. So asking this abstracting question is going to, so save time was one answer that came up versus making sure ergonomically it is better. So these are, now if you look at it, if you start looking at the range of solutions for save time versus ergonomic loading and unloading, you will come up with completely different class of solutions. Does it make sense to all of you? Any questions about that? So this, I tell you, is, I mean, for me also it is an eye-opener, and I spent a lot of time discussing with my colleague Arun Srinivasa, who was, we really used to spend time, and we actually worked with some students to come up with this. It's something that you have to train yourself to do it. That is, you come up, any product, right? Whatever product you're working on, try to come up with a need statement to the customer. And then ask the question why. Try not to bias your answer by coming save time or this by itself. Go to the customer and see whether they can tell you that answer. Why is always take it up in the abstract level, higher up need. Okay? Whereas you always, so and then, how do you stop it? Once you say save time, why save time? I can always ask the question again. So any answer for that? Save time for more trips, ability for more trips. Okay, so that could be one. Any other reason why save time could be there? Sorry? So customer satisfaction is not in the verb noun form. So this also happens to be important because otherwise your answer will again become very generic. Customer satisfaction by itself is not this thing. We are all hoping that these are all going to satisfy customer needs only, right? But so what verb noun can you come up with as an answer for this? Higher turnaround, so more trips could be, like for example, or fewer workers, working fewer time, work like what do you say? Shorter transport time. I'm not coming up with a verb noun, but yeah, I believe you can understand. So that's also coming out to turnaround time. Fewer workers. Okay, how even that doesn't come as a verb noun. Fewer is an adjective, unfortunately. But anyway, you will be able to come up with it. Reduce workers' time, or something like that. Okay. So this sort of exercise will again lead you from this save time into different abstract needs. Okay. Now I can still ask for one of these questions. Again, I can ask, why do you want to reduce workers? What will happen? If I keep asking like that, what will happen? Very clear. Client will take a stick and start chasing after you. Then you know to stop asking why. Right? So the moment you're running and the client is behind you with a stick, you can stop asking why questions. No, I'm just joking there. But when the answers start becoming too abstract, philosophically, I think we need to have, it becomes very philosophical. It becomes so abstract, then, it's time to stop asking the questions. Okay? Or also, if you run out of patience, or your client runs out of patience, you can stop. But ideally, you shouldn't let that happen. You should try to continue to ask the question, and this may give you several answers also. If you ask why, both save time and what was yours? Sorry? Reduce the medical effects. Both could be possible, and you may have to write down both. Okay, please don't say only one answer is permitted and therefore this thing. But it will lead you into certain different directions and the broader class of students. Yeah.
Sir, we are started with teams with rural people mainly.
So these kind of questions, when we ask them, they generally say, "Sab theek hai, sab chal raha hai, अच्छे से चल रहा है." And it's very hard for them to get these answers in this typical manner of noun and verb, right?
Right.
So what we generally do is we actually observe them. We hardly talk to them.
Right.
So probably.
So if they are not able to come up with the verb now, make sure as you
Observe them, you can try to, so you have a market segment in mind, clearly, right? And interacting with the market segment, as all of you know, you can do it in three ways. You can live like them, like if you're a construction worker, you can actually start transporting bricks up, or you can observe them as he's doing, okay, as an ethnographer. Or the third one would be, you can talk to them, okay. If talking sometimes may not work, you're absolutely right, because the process of converting the pain you're feeling to a finite set of words is actually not a simple ability. It's not a simple ability. Okay, so not everybody will have, and they might in fact lead you astray by what they say. So now you're in observation mode, you could still do that yourself. You don't have to only get it from the dialogue. So when you're writing down the observations, do not write, oh, this process was satisfactory for that person. Given now, noun verb. Okay, it lightened the load, or it reduced the time of transport. Something like that. If you can note down like that, that will start helping you collect those. Okay, good question. Certainly. This iterative process of going back to the customer, it is an underlying current that pervades my talk. I'm not going to keep telling it explicitly, but absolutely right. This iteration of continuously getting that feedback is just a very important aspect of the entire thing. Okay. So we stopped asking why because we are getting chased by the customer with a stick. So now we will go just the other direction. We will see what happens if you ask the question how. Okay. So save back pain, reduce back pain. So how? To do that, then you will start. Answers will usually come out in the form of particular embodiments, particular actual ways of doing it. No, ideally you would like not to do that. The customer really should not care about the embodiments as long as the high level abstraction needs are being met, and to a certain extent the technical requirements. Up to a certain technical requirements, after that how you are accomplishing it, strictly speaking, should all be in a black box. Lots of times I have student mentor teams who come, I mentor some student teams who come and talk to me. They are super excited about the method by which they actually solve the problem. Okay? I tell them so many times and try to emphasize this. Look, nobody cares. I'm sorry. I like the technical aspect. If you want, I will pat you on your back. But after that, you forget about it. Really, nobody cares. Okay? It's inside the box, and you should not even let the customer know how it happened. Okay? It should work. That's all. It should satisfy their needs. Their needs are not. So in fact, what happens is like one particular company came. They were interested in the seat adjustment device. So there are various ways by which you can do. The normal springs and their motors you can do. And lately, I work on a material called shape memory alloys. Okay? Those are damn cool materials. Okay, and they can replace your motor. Sort of cost slightly less only, but they're much lighter weight. The entire mechanism, up to that point, if they're going to sell it for 1.1 kgs, it will only be 700 kgs, 700 grams. So now this is important. Immediately the customer is looking up and saying, in fact, what happened was this particular company which is making this, for a long time they were going to the customer and saying, we are going to remove motors and we're going to put shape memory alloys in there. They thought they'll impress the customer superbly, and the customer say, oh wow, clap hands and get some. No, the customer did not care. This Mercedes-Benz did not care. Okay. Finally, what they did was they just put a box and said, here's the device. We are doing it up to 1.1 kilograms for this device up to this point. Now it's 700 grams. And here it's satisfying all your requirements. You want to do 1,000 cycles? It does 1,000 cycles. You want it to operate at few radians per second? It does that. Okay. Everything it is doing. And that is the time they bought it. Up to that point, the customer was saying, no, we don't even want it. They didn't care. They really did not want it. Because they were afraid, if they bring some newfangled device, will it work or not? Okay? So only finally when that company actually hid all the method into a box and just gave the solution, that is when they bought it. Yes?
We really made a difference between features of the product and the benefits. I think what is coming out is the customer only cares for the benefits. The feature, what is there inside is our excitement. It has nothing to do with the customer. So speaking his language, I think that's the point making, right? The benefits to the customer.
Exactly, I agree with that. So it's not the, how you have accomplished it. The methods do not at all matter. It's finally whether you're addressing their need in their fashion. Sometimes the customer will also say, they'll come and say, I want a motor in there which will operate at that torque and that RPM. They will come and tell you that. Actually, I've seen that. Then you should ask them why, and then hopefully, you should get them out of that mode of getting to such details. Okay? So that requires a certain amount of skill and a certain questioning mindset, right? Any other questions about that? Okay, so then we'll go forward. How am I doing on time? I think it's 5. Oh my God, it happens to people like professors always love to talk, no? Just keep talking. So now I'll just to speed up a little bit, hopefully without losing much of the. So then next what I was talking about is when you do this, you also have to do what's called this critical parameter identification. So lots of times the customer will come and give you a lot of parameters when they kind of specify. The client will come and tell you a lot of things they want. Okay? And unfortunately, with all the constraints that we have, we cannot do all of that. So we have to basically identify the make or break issues, and it kind of goes with the abstraction process. The moment you ask why, you will find that certain needs which they actually told you are really not critical. Like I gave you an example. They want a motor of a certain torque inside that. Okay? You ask why. They want, if a person of a certain mass is leaning backwards, they still want to be able to operate that. So you abstract out the need. So then the motor doesn't matter after that. Okay? So then the critical parameter is not the motor torque. It is just the ability of this chair to go backwards. Is that clear? So this goes hand in hand with the abstraction process, and you should be able to identify this critical parameter that goes with it. And as I mentioned, there could be several critical parameters and several critical constraints that happen. So here you can see there could be a stopping distance could be important, then the deceleration, the energy dissipation rate, energy transformation. So you'll find that there'll be different critical parameters at the different level of abstraction, and all of these will affect the kind of range of solutions that you can come up with. Okay. So then the third aspect, and this is a very important aspect which goes into the first two, is asking these questions. You have to continuously ask the customer a whole bunch of questions. This how makes it more abstract, and to go towards more, it doesn't come on the screen. Yeah, by now I should recognize it. But like the process of asking this need as how and all that will bring it more abstract. Okay, so you have to ask the question how, which and what, why, need, why, when, who. All these questions, you have to surround the need with all these questions and make sure you are writing down the answer in as abstract a fashion as possible. And also, you should never forget to ask the converse question, how not, why not, who not, and so on. The converse questions, lots of times we forget. Okay? So lots of times we say, when I say I need to identify the persona of my typical client. Let us say I have a device, like a new iPhone, like a new phone device, which is going into the market, let us say. Okay? I think of a persona of a person who's going to, the early user batch that's going to use it. Okay? I should also in my mind have what that person is not. We think of them as like, having some money, having free time, wanting to look cool and so on. But it turns out that you have to think of who is not in that also. You have to spend some time thinking about it. Okay? This is true of lots of things. When I think of my engineering design department, I think of what we are. I also have to be thinking of what we are not. We are not everything else in the world also. If you take care of this, it doesn't mean we are everything else in the world. Okay? We are not, for example, in the core sciences of chemistry or physics or something. We are in the application aspect. So we have to make sure we are not in the biomaterials. We are in the bio devices. So we have to make sure what we are and what we are not. Also, both of them happen to be equally important. Okay? Please do ask questions if I'm saying. So now we'll make sure I wrap up by 5:30 so that we can have some interaction. So the usual common way of designing is you get your idea for design, then you try to go back. There's a trial and error process with the client. You go to redesign, and there's some kind of random cyclical process. You don't know which you're doing first, which you're doing next. You might redo the redesign without even talking to the customer, or vice versa, right? But there's a better way of doing this. You get the idea? You have to evaluate. Somehow we don't put the evaluation process of the idea in a very systematic fashion. Okay? You are abstracted out the need, you make sure it is satisfying the abstracted out need. Then you evaluate how well it will do, then you go to redesign. And of course, if it is okay, then you go to the client. But this is also too late if you're going to do all of that. So of course, even better is to get the idea. This is where I'm talking about trying to abstract out the functionality. Then you evaluate. And in this process, you might, I'm probably missing some boxes here. You might have to, I'm missing some connections here. But you may have to do some redesign, evaluate, check, compare against the needs of the client. So make sure you're getting that input again and again. And then you go through the process. And finally, you get your final product. So, of course, the best process would be is to, how do we recognize and measure the success is also very important right away. So, lots of times, we do not think of our evaluation criteria a priori. How do I know that what I've come up with is successful or not? We don't think of it beforehand. What happens is, by the time we come up with the product, we are so invested in the product, we also start coming up with our evaluation criteria to match sort of with the product. Okay? So what you should do is, you should make sure that right away itself you have the evaluation criteria clearly laid out early enough. And then if you go through the abstraction process, then you go through the need analysis and redesign, then it starts becoming a much more iterative closed loop process. And so idea is, at the very least, I know I'm not really connected the boxes, I think very well. I think my open office, something, some of the, I think arrows might have gone out of that thing. Yeah.
What about the client changes requirements?
Good question. What about if the client changes in the requirement? Of course, you are in deep soup. That's short answer. But no. So what happens is, why do the clients change their requirements? Because they are also not very clear. Okay? Hopefully, this process of abstracting the need, asking them the question, and letting them know that some of the things that you say are not critical parameters. If these are satisfied, will you be satisfied? Is actually a very good process in actually helping the client prevent change, not do this, change stuff on you. Okay? Lots of times the clients are also not very clear. So this also helps. Thanks. That's a good point. Any other questions? Okay. So I think basically it's much more iterative than what I've drawn here. I think so basically you have to make sure there's a need analysis. What is needed by asking and evaluation analysis. How do you make sure you're satisfying the needs? In the process, you have to do this abstraction and functionality. And you have to tie up the redesign. You can see some arrow there. Sorry about that. So, and then how did I do it and how well did I sing? You make it a very iterative process. Yeah. Uh-huh.
You mentioned how well did they do the tests?
How did they?
All the tasks. So those tasks would be measured with the critical parameters.
No. Okay. So good question. So the question is, in the evaluation process, how do we know I did well on the tasks? Okay, and does it depend on the critical parameters? Was the question, right? Now, the critical parameters should help you in your initial. It goes along with the abstraction to really identify the measures of the success. And the values that you come up with. So, for example, brakes that will come up, like the trucks that will transport 150 liters versus 10 liters or something like that. So, there will be some clear numbers. So, okay, here I'll explain that a little bit slightly differently. So, what will happen is the customer will come with a set of certain needs. That needs will have numbers on various aspects. as I told you, in this Mercedes car, this automatic seat reclining system, they would come up with even the motor torque requirement, rate at which it leans, what is the mass it should support, all of them. When you do this need analysis, say, why do you want this motor at this torque? Why do you need this to rotate at this speed? But if you ask these abstraction questions, you will find that some of those requirements are not even your needs. It just so happens that they came up with it because of some historical circumstances. They're not even needs. So in which case, you will not even have them as after you convince the customer that their needs are only in the mass that they're supporting and the rate at which they're moving backwards. Then you will start putting the measures of success on that. Okay? So then your evaluation will only be based on those. So yeah, to answer your question, the critical parameters will help you identify what are the relevant measures of success.
Then we'll have multiple parameters. So let's say I make a seat which can carry, just hypothetically,
Sure?
it can recline a guy who weighs 1 ton.
Sure.
So it's a huge improvement in one critical parameter, which is mass, right? But it's not actually a
Good question, good question. So he's saying, so the critical parameter, when I say, it is not only a one-sided inequality. Okay, it is never, so critical parameters support appropriate weight. Support weight of passenger. Okay, that is it. Now, that is a critical parameter. That is the critical parameter. I cannot design my seat without that in consideration. But what are the limits on that? We have to talk about that as well. So when they say, if Mercedes-Benz comes in to me and says, look, it has to support up to 300 kilograms, or something like that, 0 to 300. Okay? Now, I could ask why. Okay? Make sure that the 300 number really came from some real market survey, or was it just an arbitrary number? So then the 300 also, whether it's critical, the 300 is critical. Support weight is a critical parameter, but what is the limit also? We may have to redo the question about why 300. And then they might say, oh, you know what? Yeah, we don't have customers who will weigh 300 kilograms, but sometimes they may put a heavy object in their lap and drive. Okay? So then you'll have to you might come up with a complete different solution. You might, come up with another solution which doesn't do that because, it has implications on safety or whatever else, right? So at least you'll be clear about why you have that. So just to answer this question, critical parameter identification has two aspects to it. One is whether the parameter is important and what are the ranges. That is a separate question. Again, that also you should examine. So is it clear? So you have to do all the process of how did I do it, how well did I do the task, and so on. Okay? So this is a design cycle. This is kind of trivial only, so we'll not go through this. So again, just putting everything out here. So recognition of need, gathering of information, identification of real need. So this process, after this, you need some more information before you can identify real need. Then you write the need statement. Then you identify the functional requirements that come from the need statement. So this is where you will write the noun verb format. Okay. Then you also identify the non-functional report. Just like I told you, you have to know who your customer is. You have to know who's not your customer also. Like that, you have to identify non-functional requirement. There'll be some requirements which don't come out of the function, but will be there underlying it. Okay, so you have to write that. Then you identify the constraints in as careful a fashion. Then you start doing some calculations. Back of the envelope, order of magnitude calculations. Can you do it? Can you not? Will it fit in this? Then organization of function structure. And then you go through development of design specifications. Now you come to very specific embodiments. So there is a rather systematic process by which you can do. So far, strictly speaking, today's discussion, I really focus more on this. Okay. When I have another opportunity, I think we were just thinking of seeing maybe some other time, I could talk a little bit more about, particular embodiments also. I have something in that. Whether I can just say something quickly here. Let's go forward. I think I have something here. So, this is just another way of putting all of this. Abstraction, object function method, concept search technologies, function, okay. It's a lot of stuff. I don't think any of you will remember all of this stuff right now. We'll come back to it another time if you really want it, or if you, maybe I can even put it up on my web page or something like that later. So, this is a very important thing. I just do want to spend 10 minutes on this. It is actually kind of makes what I'm saying a little bit more specific. So, here's what is called a functional decomposition. We do this, by the way, as a course in one of our first year courses in engineering design department. It's called functional and conceptual design. It requires you to decompose your idea into various components. So, you can see here, we have said that the subconscious is always eager to come up with a solution. Let it do so. Let it come up with. So, for example, I want to build an autonomous self-driving car. Okay, that is the idea. So, immediately what your subconscious tell you, you need a computer which will automatically control it. You need to basically come up. Of course, this is a very complex system, so it's not easy for you to look at something that's already out there. But you know that every aspect of it, you will be guided by a subconscious which is telling you what to do. So what we are saying is, let us start specifying this product in a very specific verb noun format. So what do you want to do? You want to drive car. Okay. So if you ask, why do you want to drive the car? It starts becoming abstract. That means it starts becoming philosophical. Okay, we want to move from place to place. Why do we want to move from place to place? All that is a little bit more philosophical, so we can stop and we want an autonomous driving car, we drive car. So now we go to the embodiments by asking the question, how? How do you drive the car? Okay, so then first you have to monitor your environment. You have to know what the hell is going on outside, right? You know whether you're on the road or in a ditch. Then you have to monitor the instrument data. You have to be able to get, if you had some instruments, you should be able to get all that information. You have to be able to control the speed. You should be able to speed up or slow down as the case may be. You need to control direction. Right? All of these aspects are part of the driving car. So when I asked how, all these possible can come, and you can see all of them are in a verb noun format. Okay. Now I don't do much here, but if you can look here, if you want to monitor environment, how do you do that? You have to get some sensor data. If I want to monitor environment, if I want to know where I am on a car, am I in a crowded parking lot, I have to know that I have to get some sensor data. Okay? And I have to compare it with something. I have to know whether am I in an extremely crowded place, too less crowded. So by asking how do I do it, I keep going further and further into specifics. And whereas if I ask why do I do it, so why am I getting sensor data and comparing with norm? Because I want to monitor the environment. Why do I want to monitor the environment? I need to eventually be able to drive the car in a controlled fashion. Okay? So this is more for the engineering community. I give this course for that. Talk for. So I just talked about, I try to talk about the various mechanical parts that they learn and how they actually transmit energy, forces, motion, mass, or information. Actually, strictly speaking, these are only things that all products actually do. They transmit this from place to place. It's a little bit too broad, so I'm just going to. So I will just probably kind of wrap up here. Maybe this is a very basic slide. I'm sure all of you are kind of thinking about it. So as engineers, definitely I want to keep thinking about safety, okay? And especially if I'm going to build an innovative product, the safety of the product itself is also going to be innovated, right? I don't know. If I know that a particular building is there of this kind, I know what the safety rules tell me. But if it's going to be an innovative building with sitting on stage and it is inclined at a certain angle and all that, then the rules of safety itself will start becoming the thing. So, if, for example, if I might know all the safety of a particular use of a compound, but if I'm going to use it in nanotech form, then I may have to go back to evaluated safety. Yeah, much more careful. So this is a certain thing that we need to look at. So efficient design, we have like try to consider the system of use as a whole, resources, how much work. Okay, this is all a separate topic by itself. I'm not going to spend much time. So I just come to the summary. Okay. So finally, let me just hit upon the most important thing, or that 1.5 hours, 2 hours that we spent. Things that I really would like you to just remember from this. Clearly, you have to identify a client who is going to be affected by your product. So it will turn out that there will look like a lot of people on the way who will look like your client, okay, but may not be. They might just be imposing constraints on you. For example, there will be a government regulation on your product, but they are not your client. Okay, just because there is a government regulation, you should not redesign your product for that. Okay, so you go identify your client. The government regulations might be the ones that will shape your product. So go ahead and identify your client, the person who is affected. So government is not affected by your product. That's it. So then, as I mentioned, you have to identify a need, okay, which should be as high level abstract as possible, ideally in a and then in functionality in terms of verb noun or an action object format. Okay, that's a very useful thing. Please go try it out. In fact, if possible, you even try it out some now. Try it out for stuff you're doing. Just do it. It will really open your eyes. It will really open your eyes to what you're doing. Okay? So if there's one thing you can take away from this talk, let it be that. Try it out all the stuff you're doing. What all aspects. You might have many things. Every aspect, write out verb, noun, and why you're doing it and how you're doing it. See if it leads to the next step naturally. Because by prejudice, you would have put in certain steps which need not be there. The moment you ask this question, you will start recognizing a very different way of okay? Then finally, when you come to that, you will come to the configuration. You will actually come, if you go do the how and so on, you will come up with a particular embodiment by putting in. So if the engine should be of either electric vehicle or it could be a IC engine. IC engine also 4-stroke, 2-stroke. So those are particular embodiments. Then how do you pack the material most efficient? How do you use the space for that particular truck that we talked about? How do you where do you put in your refrigerator? Would it be at the back or the front? So those are all particular embodiments. Once you ask the need questions, you will get a particular embodiment. Okay? But then all we want to do is we want to make sure you're separating the functions. You don't want your refrigerator to support some other load. Refrigerator should take care of the refrigeration. Okay? Something else should take care of the supporting the load. So on. Those sort of things, exploit symmetry, make sure your weight distribution is uniform, all of the stuff. Provide the shortest paths for loading various things. So as he said, loading is a very important thing, save time. You require your truck to have different loading points. So in which case, shortest places where easiest access. I will just put it there. It will also save that function. So like this, if you go ahead and do it, you will start looking at much more innovative possible solutions. So and then finally, you have the detailed design, which will actually look at the embodiment, which will do all these things like store, transport, energy, and force, motion, mass, and information. And then make sure that your evaluation processes are laid in place well before. So when you are coming up with a product, beforehand, when will I know this product will succeed? What things should it satisfy? If I'm not clear about it, make sure I go talk to the customer again. Make sure their need statement is translated. Because otherwise what happens is this evaluation process will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, I got this to work. therefore it works. Understand? So that is also turns out to be an important thing which I didn't touch upon much, but so that's all I have for today. Thank you all for your attention.
By the customer always.
Right. I see. So what he's saying is the need. Well, essentially, wants we don't want to say because you can want anything, but needs are like absolute minimum. I cannot do without it, kind of thing. Okay. So needs are also driven by competition. True, no problem. So in other words, again we have to think about there also you have to think about the customer. Okay. So supposing I'm coming up with this, as I said, new seats for Mercedes-Benz. Okay. There will be another supplier who will come and say, no, I can make seats with silk or leather covers or something like that, which you are not. So now you go back to the customer and say, do you need it? You have to ask. Now the customer, of course, will change their mind depending on what are all the information they're getting. Okay? And that information could come from your competitor also. Okay? But sometimes they might find that, for example, if it's lower end car, they may not say leather seats while the person is offering them for a cost more. They may say, no, I don't need it. So it's not as if the client is also completely only driven by just looking at just what the competition is offering, right? So you still have to, yes, the competition will affect what you're doing, but you should still go to the final client to see if it is really necessary or not. Right. Client will be taking a call. Okay? Client will be taking a call. Sure. Yes.
So, when it comes to critical parameters and evaluating whether I can actually work,
Right.
it seems like if I'm asking the right why questions, I'm always getting to a point where I can quantify something and I can evaluate properly.
Right.
You ever find situations where it can't be quantified?
Well, it can't be quantified. Actually,
See, okay. Good question, actually. So what he's saying is, if I do start identifying critical parameters, it might turn out that you can also quantify it. But I'll be suspicious of just because you ask the critical parameter identification question that you're directly getting a quantification. I would again go back and abstract out that quantification. Why are you saying that this particular loading rate is important? Is something that I would still go ahead and ask and make sure that there's an answer to it. Okay. So in other words, so it's not true that you identify the parameter, you already know the quantification. But sometimes you can identify the parameter and the quantification may not be, what he's saying is they may not be explicit with it. So they may not tell you explicitly, this is what I want. Okay? So how do you handle such situations is probably what you're asking.
I mean, I'm thinking about some cases like, okay, let's talk about the truck, right?
Right.
So if my requirement is that I want this truck to be simple enough that I can fix it.
Right.
That's hard to quantify, right? So I can find different ways to quantify it, all of which are not perfect.
Yeah.
So that's like.
So of course, all of people who are doing products for their startups know the answer to this question. If the question is vague, you have satisfied it. Yes, it is damn simple. My truck is very simple to fix, no problem. Okay? So you can always answer the question in affirmative if you don't have a quantification of the thing. Oh, simple, easy to load? Yes, my truck does easy loading, no problem. Now they should tell me like, no, this is not easy loading because it's taking me 20 minutes, whereas I would like it to be done in 10 minutes. Otherwise, you will be going down the slippery slope of no return. You will never satisfy a person who is not giving you a quantification, right? So you have to put the thumb and say, look, I need a number. Is this number okay? Is this number okay? And so on. So otherwise, you say, yes, we have satisfied your need. I'm sorry to be a little cynical, but that's how it is, right? Right? That's how you have to do it. Yeah.
So sometimes what happens, the client wants the basic feature.
Yes.
The moment we start adding innovative features on it,
Yes.
they are saying we don't need.
Oh, okay. Excellent. So that's very good. So that shows you the importance of identifying needs and critical parameters before it.
Features is what differentiates us.
No, 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 no. Yes. 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 So very important. That's no. Ah,
We are doing quantification of how much volume it has lost throughout the year.
right.
But they said we are not interested, we just want quantified.
Yes. This is the exact reason why you have to go with the customer need and only satisfy their need. Like if you go and put other stuff, you should put it into a box where they don't know about it. Moment they ask for it, then you should say, but that should come from them. Otherwise, they think you are trying to rip them off. They think that your cost, because everything has a cost to it. Everything, there are no free lunches in this world. You are, right? You understand this? So that's important. Wow factor is not a need. It's not a need. Okay. You can, like we talked about the iPhone example, you can create a wow factor, but not by telling that your product has it. If you can like maneuver it, and for that you need to really play the psychological game very well. In the marketing process, if you go tell them like that measuring the volume, some people do it. For you, I'm not going to, that turns out to be very important in like that bottom line. It affects them like that, and you just leave it. Let that seed go, and then they come and say, oh, I need this. Then is when you supply it. So similarly, what sort of iPhone did, right? I mean, up to that point, you give me a clunky phone, I'm okay with it as long as it's working, right? Then you tell them, no, it's cool to have a phone like this. It's nice to have that annoying ringtone with your phone. Then like you make it a status symbol. Then you say, okay, here it is for 50,000 rupees extra, right? So that is how you can maneuver the market. But otherwise, they'll always be suspicious that you're charging them more than what they wanted, right? Because there's always no free lunch. Everybody is aware of it. Any other questions? Yes.
So I think the problems here actually was that our customers it's a B2B company that we are working on.
Right.
So the business that we are working on is pipeline integrity management.
Sure.
So even the customer does not know what problems are there in the pipeline.
Sure.
So if we are building a robot,
Mhm.
which is doing a leak detection.
Right.
And we are saying other than leak detection, there is corrosion estimation also.
Right.
So prevent future leaks.
Right.
Customer is saying we don't want corrosion estimation, just want leak detection.
Yeah.
So that's where the problem is.
So that's what. So don't do it. If they don't want it, they don't do it. So don't try to make the customer look stupid. That's very important. Like you don't say you don't know what you want. We tell you. That nobody likes. I mean, none of us will also like it. If somebody comes and tells you, like, here's a phone, you don't want it. You need another 512 gigabytes. You'll say, go take a hike, right? So you should never make them feel stupid. If you can build it for the same cost, you go ahead and build it in because you think that you can sell it somewhere else. But if not, you take it out of the product. It's okay, right? That's. Yeah, no, certainly. No, not government, but anybody. I mean, I'm sure if somebody thrusts something in my face and say, you need this and you're stupid because you don't know it, I will not take it. I'm sorry. Everybody operates on ego, right? So that's what. So that's why you should avoid that.
Also, I think,
Yeah,
sorry, we are digressing
certainly, yeah.
to customer.
No problem. I think it's all part of the entire.
I think one important thing is kind of bringing it by way of conversation, like asking them questions of how they may not. One of the ways in which, I mean, this is something which
Yeah.
about understanding.
Make him say it.
Make them identify the need. That's all.
He said this, you were not there.
Exactly.
If you say it, it's a lie. If the customer says it, it's a
Exactly.
truth.
So
Make
they
him
may
say
not.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Just
right.
ask a few
So
questions.
we should always make them identify their need and be very clear about that they have done it. It might be that if you are very good at the game, psychological game, you might make them say whatever they did not want. But for that, you really need to be, I mean, very, very sophisticated. Yeah, just kidding. Other questions? Okay, thank you so much for your attention. I hope you got something out of it.
Thank you so much everyone for coming today. I'm from Incubation Cell and we have Incubation Cell and the Alumni Center. We'd like to thank you all. And most importantly, Professor Srikanth, thank you for coming. I'm sure everybody sitting here is still thinking of abstract questions and the critical answers that you're still thinking about. And a small portrait.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you all, and I hope now you know about our department. Please feel free to drop by. Our email address is on the webpage. Anytime you want, we're ready to open.